Hello, welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA. It's Thursday afternoon. Joining me from New York City is Tim Bontemps.
Hello, guys.
It's only 12 hours away from any NBA game. Last night, Pacers, Knicks, Knickerbockers with another W. Can't be stopped. Joining us from Los Angeles, California, out on the West Coast, about to watch the Mavericks play the Lakers on Thursday night, Band MacMahon.
Howdy, partners. It's been a tough little LA stop for the DFW teams, TCU, the Mavericks. We'll see if that changes tonight.
Luca with the strategic collapse into the second row of stands. You know, they have a big wide row there, and it's for exactly so Luca can be safe for guys like that. Like when he toppled over those courtside seat holders. He better not try that again tonight because there'll be celebrities there, and the security will move in to protect the celebrities, not Luca.
Well, Luca was playing with a heavy heart. He's a week-long TCU football fan, and went to the game with Jay Kidd. Luca actually recently got a horned frog as a pet. Luca Jr.
Where did that come from, by the way?
I think the Dude Perfect guys gave it to him. He did something with Dude Perfect. And
okay.
And it was soon thereafter that he had a horny toad, as he calls it. He had, some cowboy boots and the hat. You saw the whole get up for Christmas Day, but I did inquire about the emotional state of Luca Jr., as this little horny toad is named. Luca informed me that he is sad. He was sad after seeing his brethren, the TCU Horned Frogs, get squished and squashed and just frog legs cooked all over by them mean old nasty Bulldogs.
Well,
so we'll see how it took Luca half to get going against the Clippers, and wasn't quite enough. We'll see if he can put together a full half, and if the Mavericks can hold a team under 162 or so.
That's the thing about Luca. He had definitely. What would you give his grade on that performance, MacMahon? Was C+?
Yeah, and he ended up with whatever
had
43, 11, and 7.
43. 43. Like nobody really debate, like who knows Luca at all, that was just an average game. Just not bad, but not good. And he had 43. I don't know.
I don't know if got cooking in the second half. Obviously, but it was too little, too late, and not his finest defensive work, and that fit right in with the rest of the Mavs crew.
All right. Well, the Clippers needed the win. So this week, over the last couple of days and over the next few days, just about every team is hitting the exact midpoint of the season, their 41st game. So we thought it would be a good opportunity to evaluate what we've seen in the first half of the season, what we're interested in, what we've been surprised by or disappointed by, what it's set up for the second half. Basically, catch-all, we would say, is our takeaways from watching these first 41 across the league. So we're going to go down the line here, and we're going to start with the most respected member of our crew, Mr. Bontemps.
What? In the eyes of some people. Certainly not others.
I'm sorry, my AirPods aren't working that well. Did you say the most disrespected member of our crew?
Yes, you did hear it correctly.
Okay.
Good job.
Well, we can go a lot of different directions. I'm sure we will. But the thing that stood out to me, at least one of the things, is that I think the Western Conference might be the most wide open conference we've seen in as long as I can remember, in terms of teams that could come out of it and reach the finals. I mean, I think you can make an argument that up to maybe even 7 teams can go into the playoffs as of today and say they can make a reasonable case that they could win 3 playoff series. Usually we go into the playoffs, there's a couple teams in each conference that really have a chance. Maybe one surprises and wins a couple rounds, like saying Atlanta did a couple years ago. But the NBA playoffs are generally not about surprises. And I feel like the West in particular this year has a chance to be completely unpredictable and totally wide open because, say right now, Golden State's in a play-in spot. If Golden State's playing Denver in the first round or Memphis in the first round, they're not going to be worried about winning that series and 2 more after that. Same with the Clippers, same with even Phoenix. I just think we've got a chance to have a pretty exciting Western Conference playoffs. And and from an unpredictable standpoint, I just think it's unlike anything we've seen in a really long time, if ever.
The Western Conference playoffs were decided in December. John Morant declared. The Grizzlies are fine in the West. What are you talking about?
That's true. That's true.
No, I agree with you. And it's in large part because there's no just flat out dominant team. The Nuggets and Grizzlies have been the best team. Certainly they both have superstar players, a perennial MVP in Nikola Jokic and obviously Morant. But when you're looking at, as you mentioned, the Clippers and the Warriors, likely in the bottom half of the bracket, maybe even having to earn their way out of the play-in scenario, that's pretty scary. And one thing that the other night, the Mavs against the Clippers the other night was a reminder of is when Kawhi Leonard actually puts on a uniform, he's still one of the baddest bleepity bleeps on the planet Earth. I mean, he is still full-blown Terminator Kawhi. So, Paul George still isn't healthy, but if those two guys are healthy, nobody's going to be eager to see the Clippers in the playoffs. And, the Warriors 4 championships speak for itself.
Yeah. I mean, right now you have the team that had the number 1 seed last year and was the number 1 team 6 weeks into the season is in the play-in. That's Phoenix. They're in a free fall because they have no players. And the Warriors, the defending champs, also in the play-in right now. I don't think it's going to end that way. Of your 7 teams, Bontemps, I'm curious as to who's out of that mix. I mean, do you have Sacramento in that mix?
The 7 teams I think you can make some sort of case for are Denver, Memphis, New Orleans, Dallas, the Clippers, the Suns, and the Warriors.
Oh, okay. Talk about disrespect. Those beamlighters, as we speak, are sitting in 4th place in the Western Conference.
They are.
Mike Brown, Coach of the Year candidate. Actually, I don't know.
He's done a hell of a job. And they've had a great season.
Bonus atop his straw poll.
Yeah, he just had like another triple-double last night. Just don't mind him.
No, he didn't. He only had 9 assists.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that it. I don't want to take away from what I'm about to say, so I'll just stop and I'll just go to you, MacMahon, for your observation.
No, what? Oh no, hold on. Now we want to know what you had to say.
Well, no, what I'm about to say is my takeaway. My first takeaway is I don't want to steal from that.
Okay, you don't want to steal your own thunder. I got you. I thought you were editing yourself. I thought you had a hot. I thought you had a hot take that you were suppressing.
No, I usually just straight get in trouble with that kind of stuff.
All right. I mean, my take is, I think a takeaway here is a pretty obvious one, but that is this league has gone to a completely different stratosphere in terms of offensive production, and I'm not sure it's ever coming back. Just to put this in perspective, the Cleveland Cavaliers, say that slowly, Wendy's hometown squad is the number 1 defensive team in the NBA. That efficiency is 109.2. Rewind 5 years, only 5 years, not a generation, just 5 years ago, 109.2 would have ranked tied for 19th in the league in defensive efficiency. And I think there's a wide variety of reasons. I do think some of the rules changes have helped and have been a good thing. The fact that you can't just wrap a guy up to stop the most exciting play in basketball now is certainly a good thing. Obviously, you look at the skill and the talent of not just stars in this league, but players in the league in general. We can talk about, obviously, the 3-point shooting. Another thing, though, is I just think guys who were very good players in this league 10 years ago couldn't play in the NBA today. And I'm talking about your Tony Allen types, like the one-dimensional defensive star, your all defensive guys who didn't contribute offensively. They can't get on the floor because you're not going to win mud wrestling matches in today's NBA. You've got to outscore teams.
In the regular season. In the postseason, I think that's still up for debate.
In the postseason, the worst thing you can do is be in a situation where teams can guard you.
I was going to say, what's the debate there? I would say it's the opposite.
Yeah, if anything, I think it goes the other way. But and I see people talking about, well, do they need to change the rules? Do they need to tweak this or that to slow down scoring? I'm like, why? What you don't enjoy seeing guys put the ball in the basket? I think it's a good thing that the scoring so crazy. I think it's a good thing that you can flip through league pass every night and think, hey, there's a decent chance there's going to be a 50-point game tonight. I think it's fun, but I don't think that it's going to. I don't think it's going back in the other direction.
Yeah, I think it's. I would not be surprised if they consider a rule adjustment next year. And I'm not sure exactly what it would be. It's kind of, I don't want to talk about the economy, but it's kind of like the idea of the Fed raising the interest rates a little bit to, just to cool down the inflation. Maybe allowing a modicum of hand checking because it might be a little bit too hot. It might be a little bit too hot. You may not like to see games that where you sort of lose the concept of defensive integrity. So I don't know. I try not to be a stick in the mud with that, but I do think that the argument I think that you may have to keep it the way it is that we're seeing routinely, like every single night, teams make big giant comebacks. Teams are down 23, no big deal. It'll be 5 by 3 minutes to play. Team down 19 at the start of the fourth quarter. It's tied with 4 minutes left. Like we're seeing that all the time, and because of that, the speed of the game and the fact that there's just no way to slow the scoring, maybe the league is like, well, it increases the chances for teams to stay in the game. But I think there's a possibility that they may try to come backwards a little bit. The freedom of movement has maybe gotten a little bit out of control. And as far as the playoffs go, Bontemps, I know your opinion on this, and I agree that in a possession game where you are doing the straight matchups where everybody is switching, that you find the weakest defender and you can exploit them, and then that player essentially gets played off the floor. But there is still a role for, especially if you've got size and you can defend size. I mean, PJ Tucker would not have just been signed for $30 million if there wasn't.
But he can shoot. He doesn't do it often, but he has become, a guy who just stands in the corner and shoots threes. I'm talking about the guys who can't play anymore Tony Allen said it himself when I was in Memphis a few years ago before the dental situation got out of hand. He said
that's one way to put it.
Bleeps like me couldn't play in today's NBA. He said, dude with broken jumpers can't play in today's NBA. Like they won't let you on the floor.
Well, I still think there's a value in a guy who can get some stops, but I agree that at the end of close playoff games, it's hard to play them. All right, Bob,
you can't play a guy with a weakness at either end in a playoff game. And if you have to, then you're probably going to end up falling short at some point.
There's weak defenders getting 35 minutes routinely. So, you look at the Warriors last year when they rolled their 5 guys out there. The worst defender out there is Steph Curry, who's an average defender. Like that, if that's how you win championships, like at the highest level. So, if you go back through the last several years, that's the common through line with these teams that you're seeing play at the end of the season. Okay, so the thing that I am, as we sit here at the midpoint, with one exception, I don't think the contending teams have basically shown us anything. I don't think we have a really good feel of what any of the teams I really think have a good chance to win are going to look like, with the exception of the Boston Celtics. The Grizzlies, to a lesser extent, but they still haven't really been able to deploy their team for a long period of time. But I'm looking at the Warriors. I haven't even seen what the Warriors are really going to be. I have no opinion formed on them. And typically you would say, oh my God, you're under 500 at the midpoint. Like that's a red flag. I mean, certainly they've got concerns, certainly that they've got to clean some stuff up, but I think all of their goals are in front of them. 76ers, they've been a mess for parts of the first half. And that's because they've had some of their guys just wiped out for huge periods. I think the 76ers have yet to show us what they can be when they're full ahead and chugging. They're just now beginning to show that. The Bucks, Chris Middleton's played like 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
And, I expect them also to potentially make a supporting player move. I can't look at the Bucks and say, oh yeah, that's the team. I mean, they've been good at times. But I can't say that. Same with you look at the Western Conference, the Clippers. What am I supposed to read into that? Like Ty Lue is lamenting that they can't play 3 consecutive games healthy. Forget about 10 consecutive games. He's begging for 10 consecutive games that they can play
you
healthy.
Got the beam lighters up north in California and the switch flippers with the or the switch clippers, I guess. That's the question. Can they flip the switch? Because this, like, they're not going to get 10 games in a row of continuity. Like this is you can
that's
sit
what
there
Ty's
and hope
begging
and,
for.
and beg. It ain't happening.
But they might. But you know what? They might. Like, what if they get it all together? I mean, like, you can say that it's not going to happen and bet against it, fine. But what if they get it all together on March 20th and play for 3 weeks? They might be the most potent team in the West coming into the playoffs. I don't know.
They might be. The Clippers remind me a lot of the 18-19 Celtics, a team that entire season everybody said was gonna work out. It was gonna work out. They were too talented. All these pieces were gonna come together, and it just never did. And like, it could come together, but like Golden State, to your point about them, they've had arguably the best starting 5 in the league when those guys have been healthy. They have to fix some of the supporting cast issues. In theory, it'd be good for them to make a move, but they're going to be playing those 5 guys 40 minutes a game in the playoffs. They're probably going to be pretty good, right? The Clippers, we just, like, to your point, we've seen nothing from them. And to MacMahon's point about Kawhi, the moments when he looks like that version of Kawhi Leonard, like you saw one of them, there have only been a handful of them this year. Yeah. I think over the second half of the season, I need to see a lot more moments like that before I can really think that he's going to look like that on a consistent basis when it matters.
And he looked awesome the other night.
For sure.
Tim Hardaway Jr. was also the primary defender on him because the Mavericks have so many injuries that they don't have better options right now. Obviously they had to double him after, but still. My point is just like, physically he looked like the guy who's won 2 finals MVPs.
No question.
Yeah, and I think I don't exactly know how to judge the Nets. They underachieved for a while. Then they had the Kyrie situation. Then I kind of think they maybe overachieved for a while. And now Durant's out. I don't like, last year, the Warriors were the best team where, they had that sort of slug, but they were really good for like the first 20 games and they were sluggish in the middle. Phoenix was really good the whole way. Like, we could kind of see, and Phoenix got upset, but we could kind of see really from all the way it was going to be Golden State and Phoenix. We felt really good about that. That's what everyone was waiting to see, right? All season. Everyone was waiting to see that matchup.
Well, you'll see it. You'll just wait for the play-in. You'll see it.
That's right.
Right. Well, would be the game for 7th place. It would be highly rated game for 7th place. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying that this has meant nothing, but I still don't think that we've seen, and I don't think any team that's really in the top 10 in either league. Like, you look at Atlanta, for example. Atlanta has been one of the more disappointing teams in the league. Okay. And they've had some internal issues. Their general manager was ousted along the way. But they're in 10th place. Like, I'm not predicting that they're all of a sudden going to turn it on, but like, if they have a 6-game win streak, they're right back there thinking they can maybe get to the conference finals. The Heat have been banged up all year and underachieved all year. They're a 5-game win streak away from feeling like $1 million and thinking that they could get back to the conference finals. Like, I just think that the parity and the injuries and all the circumstances have basically meant that we're really not we're halfway in and we're really kind of just starting. That's what I was going to say. Okay, MacMahon, what do you got? What else is on your list?
I think it's Bontemps' turn because honestly, I've got to come up with another one because the West is wide open was going to be my second one. So,
well, I'll give you time to think about it. My second one is that the vaunted tank race for Victor Wembanyama has not really come together in the way that my colleagues on the pod thought it might a couple months ago. Like if you look, there's five or six teams that are really bad. One of them in particular, Charlotte, I think might have been a decent amount better if LaMelo Ball hadn't essentially missed the first 30 games of the season. But all these teams after that, we don't see teams pivoting to plummet to the bottom of the standings as of now. Now, I was just in Toronto for a while. They're sort of wrestling with what to do, but I don't think they're going to go all the way that far down the line. The Bulls have gone on a bit of a hot streak lately. Obviously, they had a rough game last night in Washington, but Zach LaVine's playing better. I think it's more likely they stand pat. You know, you look at all those Washington, all these teams in the middle, I think they're sort of going on the trajectory that they typically have, where they're just going to kind of see if they can be as good as they can be. And then you have teams like Sacramento, Utah, Indiana that were, in New York, all these teams that you thought, well, maybe they'll backslide a little bit and have decisions to make. They've instead gone the other way and shot up the standings.
Well, we thought Utah was, they just traded their 2 franchise cornerstones and 2 other starters. We thought they were full-blown Tankapalooza. Then they start out 10-3.
Right. So, and obviously they've gone, 11-20 since then. So they're starting to come back down to earth. But, the idea that there was going to be 8, 10, 12 teams like actively trying to position themselves to chase after getting Victor or Scoot in the draft, it just hasn't happened. And we have sort of a normal season. Yeah, I mean, that's true. We still have 3 weeks. It could change, but I guess 4 weeks. But I think if just based off the trajectory of things now, we haven't seen anybody do anything out of character to sort of get in position for that. And if anything, we've seen a few teams surprise and be a lot better than we guessed they were going to be.
Well, yeah, and the closest thing.
Indiana's been better than we thought, right? Indiana was a team that we thought would be in the Victor's.
That was one of the teams that I mentioned. That's right.
Oh,
he's reinforcing because typically people don't think you make any good opinions, any good points. So when you
some people,
Wendy wants to provide some support and highlight it's like when a dude goes 1 of 11 from the floor and you play the one bucket during the film session. Come on, Bontemps, let him give you some love. Golly, this guy. This is why he's disrespected.
It's good.
Wendy.
It's good. It's good. I'm just glad you're giving yourself more time to think about.
Actually, listen. This is true too. Also, let me back up. I apologize. My IT department told me that my bullish behavior is really getting a little bit out of control. She wanted me to soften up.
Has your IT department met you before?
She wanted me to soften up a little bit on you. She is one of, I think, a handful of Bontemps fans in the world.
It's a small group. She's an honored member.
So let me take my foot off the gas here. I'll tap the brakes. Bontemps, that was a great point. I think you really expressed it well, and I appreciate your constant contributions and real passion and knowledge for this podcast. How's that?
Very phony, but good.
All right. Passion, maybe not knowledge. Okay.
You want some more time to think, MacMahon? Because I can go if you want.
No, I got one. The Joker's putting MVP voters in a really tough spot.
Yeah.
And Wendy, unlike you, I do occasionally take a little scroll through my Twitter mentions. I got that quick mute button trigger finger. I'll fully acknowledge that, but I'll take a scroll, whatever you want to call it, through there. And some Bucks fans were lighting me up the other day. I'm like, what the Buck? What'd I do? And so
that was really terrible.
You like that? WTB.
Jesus.
But they from this very podcast, they pulled it was like a little graphic of me saying when Giannis was a 2-time defending champ, basically like it's really tough to vote a guy who hasn't even been to the finals as MVP for the third straight year, given the historic, implications of such a vote, of such a distinction. First since Bird, I think it's Russell and Wilt are the only other guys.
Well, Russell and Bird, yep.
There you go. The only other guys who have been on that list. And obviously, Giannis he didn't win MVP, but he went to the finals, won a finals MVP that year. I don't think I said you can't do it. I just said it's tough. And I still think it's tough. But I also think it's tough when a guy has been an MVP twice in a row and is having the best season of his career for a team that's the number one seed in its conference, not to give him a vote, or at least put him, like right now, I don't think you can put Joker lower than second. And Michael Malone's already kind of started the campaign basically saying, if your reason to not vote for him is because you can't give him 3 straight, you need to come up with a better reason. And that's fair.
And the other thing that's factored into that too is you've seen some of the competitors start to fall off, right? I mean, Kevin Durant was going to be right there with the way the Nets have been playing. He's now going to miss, a month, maybe 6 weeks. That's probably going to knock him out of realistic contention. Steph was going to be right there with the way he was playing. He's basically missed a month. That's probably knocked him out of contention. So Devin Booker could have been there.
He's out.
Well, Embiid just dealt with a foot thing again.
Out, get him out. Don't even put him on your ballot.
See, I knew this is why I didn't want to bring this up.
What do you have the other night, like 38
Joker's
and 15?
MVP, that we were going to get some sensitivity coming from the Philly cream cheese section.
Well, sometimes you get hurt when you play defense. Go on.
I could throw you some really nerdy defensive metric numbers that shine very favorably on the Joker.
Listen, I went on a rant the other day, a couple weeks ago, about how good the Nuggets were in the clutch, and you guys basically told me I was lucky, or not. I was lucky; they were just being lucky. So
that was bullish behavior by Bontemps. See, this is why I don't feel bad about picking on him. He's what too.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I'm keeping an eye on that. Not that it really makes a difference. But, he's now up to 9.7 assists. I think the other 2 days ago he had a 15 or 16 assist game.
Look, said it when we did the last straw poll. If he averages a triple-double and they are first in the West, it's not going to matter if he won the last 2 in a row. Like, it's just not.
I do think, though, that he is maybe he's the one guy in that conversation who's not kind of blatantly stat chasing. You know what I'm saying? So when the Celtics came through Dallas, they're up 97 points going into the fourth quarter, and Tatum played the first 9 minutes and change of the fourth quarter. Checked out right after he got his 10th assist. So he got his second career triple double. He wanted that. He played until.
Well, that was coming off of that total dud performance they had in Oklahoma City.
He also scored 9 points in about 2 minutes with a 17-point lead last night. Late in the fourth
he
quarter
scored 13 points and had 4 assists in the fourth quarter and ended up with 29, 14, and 10. It was a total stat.
If Tatum was out averaging 2 less points a game, it wouldn't really change his candidacy.
Right, but it was a total stat padding performance, and Mavs fans were all up in arms about it. Well, the very next Mavericks game, Luka played 39 minutes against a Pelicans team that didn't have Zion, Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, Larry Nance. I mean, I don't know. I go on down the list. Played 39 minutes, ended up with 34, 10, and 10. He got that 10th rebound and very quickly thereafter took a foul and checked out with a couple minutes to go. So my point is there's some pretty blatant stat chasing going around. Joker, though, I don't see him doing that. I think if you look it up, there's been a lot of games where he's ended up with 9 assists, an assist shy of a triple-double.
Honestly, do you think Jokic really cares? I mean, cares is the wrong word. Of course he wants to win it. But do you think it will if you say, Nikola, if you finish second for the MVP this year, do you think it would alter the way he feels about himself for his season?
I think
that's what's actually kind of interesting is that he's like, well, if I play and I win the third one, fine. If I don't, fine. He obviously wants to win the title. I don't think that's a question, but like, that's what's so interesting about it is that, he's probably less invested. LeBron is downright still angry about some of the years he didn't win MVP. I mean, he was angry in some years when he knew he wasn't the MVP, but he finished third instead of second. Like it bothered him just because he's a competitor, not because it was more important than winning the title. But and Jokic is a competitor, but I just don't get the feel that he really cares one way or the other. And I don't know, maybe that's a benefit for it.
Jokic has 8 9-assist games and 5 8-assist games also.
There you go.
Yeah. So, well, look, if you're looking for, if you get to the end and there's 4 or 5 guys and you can't, maybe even if there's 3 guys and you're having difficulty trying to determine who you're going to vote for, if they finish first in the West, even if he doesn't average a triple double, I mean, right now, if you give him the rounding error, he's averaging a triple double. So you might as well just say he is.
It's not the way those things work.
I know, but like if you're looking for a reason to give it to him, because I think the point that your guys are making, and is not wrong, is that going into this season, people would be looking for a reason not to give it to him.
Yes.
He had a very uphill climb to win in the first place, which is why he wasn't closer to the top in the first straw poll. Yeah. But the way the season has shook out since then, with Denver moving to the top of the West, with him playing the way he is, and with other guys getting hurt, the door is becoming a lot more open for him.
Yeah, and at this point, I think the best reason not to give it to Joker is because Luka's leading the league in scoring, putting up near triple-double production, and dragging a mediocre, injury-plagued roster to the middle of the West playoff pack.
Which, by the way, is how Jokic won it last year.
Yeah.
That's the exact formula he won it with. So,
well, if Luka has absolutely a couple of incredible statement games, and if he racks up a couple of more of those, that's definitely could be a factor. I also think that some of it is going to come down to whether or not we see somebody like you say that Curry is been diminished, and you're not wrong. If we took the poll today, Bontemps, you would probably reflect that. But what if they run off 18 out of 21 and he averages, 36 a game in that streak? Even if Denver stays at the same level and Jokic comes up the same level, if Curry has the narrative that he came back from injury and saved the Warriors season,
it's possible. I just think it's going to be very hard. There's a huge preponderance of evidence that if you missed 15 to 20 games, you're just not going to have the ability to accrue enough value to win the award. Now, again, I'm not ruling out the possibility, especially in today's environment where missing games is more of a normal thing than it's been in the past, that something like that could happen. And the West is wide open enough where if Steph in particular comes back and plays like that, maybe things are different. Maybe Durant comes back earlier than expected. Maybe that's different. But I think the odds are those guys probably drop down a level or two, and you're looking at a top tier of, Jokic and Luka and Tatum and Giannis at this point.
Look, Wendy, if you miss several weeks of podcast, then your chances to beat me out for most valuable podcaster are going to be drastically diminished. That's just the way this thing works.
Some would say if you miss 2 podcasts, that would knock you out.
Bontemps needs to get in that MIP race.
If you look at the remaining strength of schedule, and I mean, this is a highly stat that you can play around with because it depends on when you get teams on back-to-backs. It's not weighted for that, or, you get guys on injuries. But when you look at the remaining strength of schedule, the Denver schedule was heavily front-loaded, both with difficult games and with road games. They've evened out. The home road split evened out because they've been at home recently. But they're in the middle of the pack. They've got the 16th most difficult strength of schedule left. Whereas
they're the heavy favorites to be the 1 seed.
Right.
Jokic never gets hurt. They have a bunch of home games. The schedule isn't that bad. It's lined up for them to be the number 1 seed in the West, presuming something catastrophic doesn't happen.
Right. Whereas the Philadelphia has the toughest strength of schedule left. So, I don't know where Embiid would rank on the list. I think ahead of not finished in the first poll. but Philly hasn't played the bulk of their difficult games left. And by the way, the team that I want to talk about here is kind of opened my eyes. The fourth easiest schedule the rest of the way belongs to the New Orleans Pelicans. That's one of the big takeaways I've had from the first half is just how bright the New Orleans Pelicans future is. Their present is a little bit complicated because Brandon Ingram's foot injury is really dragging. We've seen this before with toe injuries. And they just can't be I mean, they've done really well to be third in the West, considering the amount of games that Ingram has missed, and now Zion with the hamstring out. But they've had other guys who've been banged up too. CJ McCollum was in. He's really rounded into form at 38 points in their game on Wednesday night, but he was slumping. My point is they haven't even hit their best. But when you watch them and you see how Zion has rounded into really more like the player that we all thought we would see when he was drafted, been way more impactful in defensive end than he was when we've seen earlier in his career, continues to be a dominating force on offense. I have a huge high opinion of Brandon Ingram. And you look at the way some of their younger players have been developing, not just Herb Jones, but also Trey Murphy, Jose Alvarado, Najee Marshall, Dyson Daniels, their lottery pick rookie. And then you think about how they have the Lakers first round pick and swap. Now the Lakers have done a much better job, after that awful first month, and their pick isn't looking as rosy, but there's still a really good chance it's going to be in the lottery. And so that means they're facing potentially back-to-back years of being a playoff team themselves while being able to draft in the lottery, the fruits of the Anthony Davis trade. And if you look where they're at, they have a bunch of trade assets that they can put together. I mean, you look at Devontae Graham, you look at Garrett Temple, you look at Jackson Hayes. They can assemble salary together and use potentially some of their draft assets to upgrade this roster if they want, whether it's by February or if it's in the summer. And the contracts that they have signed, the contract that they gave Devontae Graham is not looking so good. Okay. And it's been mitigated by the fact that Jose Alvarado has been a complete steal. And then the contract they signed him to after they found him as a diamond in the rough has also benefited them. And, but the contracts that they have are all reasonable contracts. You might take issue with the CJ McCollum extension and say, boy, I don't know how that's going to look in two and a half or so years, but that contract actually descends in value. So, they've done a pretty good job of putting themselves in position, not only to be a contender this year, but to really be able to upgrade their roster, whether it's through the draft or through trade. And their young guys have continued seriously to get better. I don't know what Pelton and Bobby Marks, do you do the future power rankings too? Bontemps, are you involved in the future power rankings? Okay. How do you guys have a formula that you weight when you when you judge those rankings?
Yes. You mean, there's a formula for each category in terms of how much it's weighted. Yes. I don't remember exactly what the weightings are across the board.
I got to feel like New Orleans, if we did one right now, New Orleans would rank pretty high. Where they're at.
Maybe number one. I mean,
yeah.
Obviously everything depends on Zion's ability to maintain conditioning, stay healthy long term. But dude, you just listed a long list of guys who are developing good complementary fits, and their stars are 25 and 22. Their two best players are 25 and 22, and Zion has a chance to be a perennial, at least MVP in the conversation. He's got a chance to be a top 10 player for a long time. Well, I don't know, for a long time, for a window here.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
all qualified with his health. We whatever you want to say, Zion, just assume that it's all qualified with his health.
New Orleans
Right.
was 11th in October in our last round of the power rankings.
That's what I'm saying. Like
behind Phoenix, behind Denver, behind Toronto, behind Miami, behind Philly. Might be
Okay,
ahead.
this
I
is
mean,
what
maybe I
happens
would have
when you
thought
put,
that
like,
was a
you put,
little.
like no, you got Einstein and like Sir Isaac Newton, and then
Now
you
remember
got
what you were
like
told by your wife.
Bozo the
Remember what you were
Clown in the
told.
group.
He remembered.
Whoa, what?
Like I would have thought that was maybe a tad low, but I wouldn't have like taken major issue with it. I mean, what about now, Bontemps? What do you think about where they're at now? I mean, I'm not telling you to do the formula.
I mean,
on top
they're
of your head,
they're probably going to move up. I would say they'd move up a decent amount. I mean, they were 10th in players and tied for 15th in management. Those are probably both going to go up in the next round of voting. I would
also
guess.
think Willie Green's proven that he's a really good coach.
That's part of the management grade, right? Like he's done a really good job. Like that's going to go up higher. Their player grade probably goes up higher, so they move up a few spots. And some of the teams above them, teams like Toronto, Phoenix, Miami that have disappointed, they're going to slide back the other way a little bit.
So, I'll say this to you. I was in France this last week to spend some time with Victor Wembanyama. Jonathan Gavoni and I spent several days talking to all kinds of people around Victor Wembanyama, Victor himself several times. We'll be having stories and stuff come out later about that, and I'll talk more about it when we get close. The Pelicans had personnel in France, and they spent some time talking to Victor's people. In fact, Victor's people, I don't know how often the Pelicans have been there, but they, sought it out. And Victor has made it very clear on the record as well that there is no wrong team for him. He even said, I think his exact quote was, "There is no wrong team." He is absolutely presenting the front that that no matter where it is, he feels like he's going to be a good fit there. But of course, he has got to be looking at teams and thinking it would be interesting to go somewhere and not the other. And like, look, right now, like, in November where the Lakers were, and now the chances aren't very high. But if you want to allow yourself to dream, you can understand why Victor might be keeping an eye on the Pelicans, because him on that squad, that would be a cruel twist for the Lakers. But there's a reason the Pelicans are spending some time there, because it's on the board. It's not likely, but it's on the board. And no matter what, they're going to get almost certainly another good pick. Even if the Lakers squeak in, they're going to still be.
Well, and the Lakers are also 1 or 2 losses for being in the top 5 or 6 in the lottery. It's not like, they're 19 and 22 right now. They could move up the standings. They also could have an injury to LeBron and go the other way really fast. So, it's certainly not off the board.
No, not for
that
sure.
They're in the mix for that. No, and to your point about New Orleans overall, they're certainly going to be, I mentioned them at the beginning. They're one of the teams in the West that I'm certainly really interested in overall. And, I'm really curious to see what Zion Williamson looks like in the playoffs. Like, teams are going to be attacking him pretty relentlessly on defense. And, I don't think his defense has improved that much. I think it's gotten better. But let's see how it holds up in those situations.
Well, his one-on-one defense may still be a problem, but
that's a pretty significant problem in the playoffs. Plus, they have Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum out there with them, who aren't exactly great defenders either. So that I am very curious to see how they hold up. But they have a ton of talent. Everything you said is right. They got a ton of talent. They have the ability to improve. They got a lot of young guys. They're fun to watch play. They're a really intriguing team. I'm really curious to see what they look like in the playoffs, because they're going to be right in the mix. No question.
Gotta have Brandon Ingram back though. Just gotta. And I know there's been, the team has been very vague on his situation, and that's whatever. Ultimately, it doesn't matter if he's not right in January, and if he goes a couple of weeks longer, what matters is that when you get to when it matters, is he's okay. And so whatever they're doing right now, they gotta have an eye on that. All right, Bontemps, do you have anything else on your list?
I got one more thing. Quick trivia question first.
Oh, yes.
Trivia.
Now it's time for Hoop Collective Trivia.
The Warriors obviously won the title last year. They are under 500 at the halfway mark of the season. Who was the last team that won the title that was then under 500 at the halfway mark of the following season?
Was it the never underestimate the heart of a champion Rockets?
No.
Ooh.
They were not under 500 at all.
Oh.
There were four other teams that have done this. I'm just asking for the most recent one.
Wasn't the Shaq Heat, was it?
It was the Shaq Heat.
You know what? Like,
This guy
retire my number. Put number one up in the rafters, baby.
Is that what number you were?
No, I was number 30 in basketball, number 4 in football.
So why number 1?
Because that's where I rank. And because we don't wear jerseys as sports writers, you doofus.
Right. But I didn't understand retire your number. I didn't get it. That was a good one.
Well,
were they really below 500 that year in 2005-06?
At the halfway mark?
No.
06, 07, the year after they won the title.
The
year they won
after.
the title. Yes.
I misunderstood the question.
We are the year after the Warriors won the title. So
I misunderstood the question.
Well,
you remember
it's like when you did trivia. It's like when you did trivia on Monday's pod with Dave and told him the answer as you asked the question.
I'm obviously not meant for this. That is 100% clear. I hands off that.
My final takeaway, though, to save you from that, is I think we might be seeing a bit of a turning point in terms of these large draft pick trades with what's happened in Atlanta and what's happened in Minnesota. Obviously, the elite players are still going to be sought after in trades. There's no question. If you name a super high level player, if Luka gets put on the trade market, obviously everybody is going to offer whatever they have to get him.
I could name another one I think could, but let's just keep moving.
Let's just keep it moving. I'm not trying to turn this into people are going to be traded talk, but guys like Rudy Gobert, DeJounte Murray, like good all-star caliber players getting traded for lots of picks, but aren't like top 5, top 10 players. Those trades immediately don't look very good for those teams. And I think it could be a bit of a resetting of the market and having people think twice before loading up for guys that aren't the super duper premium level player based off how those teams have played out.
And I think the counterpoint to that would be like, hey, where's Drew Holiday in the, in that, what echelon is he in, and that worked out awfully well for Milwaukee. But the difference is Milwaukee needed that finishing piece to be a championship team. And Minnesota hadn't sniffed the second round.
I know, but Minnesota thought it was, I don't know about finishing piece, but they thought it was like
Minnesota didn't come into the season thinking they were winning a championship. They could say what they want. That's not what, to MacMahon's point, that's definitely not what they were thinking. They thought they would be able to make a playoff run.
But see, here's the thing, like just to frame that, one of the reasons why the Knicks were hesitant to give the full boat for Donovan Mitchell is that they didn't think that trading for Donovan Mitchell meant that they had a team that could compete.
Right.
They said, we can't give all of it because then we have nothing left to build for.
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland felt differently because they had Garland, Mobley, and Jared Allen. Now we can debate about whether that mix is actually contending or not, but there, the worth of Donovan Mitchell to them was a little bit different than it was to the Knicks. The worth of Gobert to the Wolves was calculated on the fact that they thought that they had 2 perennial all-stars sitting there already on their roster. And as far as DeJounte Murray, like it's a weird thing. Like, I don't think he's had a bad season, quote unquote.
Right.
The fit obviously has not been working out. And, Trey, what it was supposed to do for Trae Young and make Trae Young more efficient and better has not actually happened. They've not gotten better.
Right. And they've been, when it's been one or the other, they've been bad. Like it hadn't been great with both of them on the floor, and they've been bad when just one is on the floor.
Yeah. And he didn't have they lost last night to the Bucks in a game that Giannis had 7 points. And, Trey didn't play and DeJounte had a poor game. Not that I want to take a 1-game takeaway, but yeah, you hear things, whether they're true or not, about other role players being available in trade, and you hear about what the asking price is. And there's an attempt by the teams that are selling to try to get the same prices. And I would agree with you, Bontemps. I just don't think we're going to see it, even though those situations were, you can't look at them in a vacuum. They were a bit unique. But I got to tell you, Walker Kessler might have helped the Wolves this year. I mean, Walker Kessler is. I'm not saying he's Rudy Gobert, but he is.
He's had a really nice year.
He was the type of player that they were missing.
He's an all rookie player. I'll say that.
Absolutely.
No question.
He's a guy who's going to start in the NBA for more than a decade.
No question about it.
Yeah.
And all these picks being traded, I think also it's gonna be hard to, at least as of right now, we're a month out from the trade deadline. A lot could change, but it's just hard to see a ton of stuff happening over the next few weeks, because they're just, if you look at all these contending teams we talked about, outside of basically New Orleans, pretty much all these other teams have traded a bunch of picks already, and it makes it difficult to make moves.
The Suns have their picks, but they have this complicated ownership situation that maybe it gets resolved and all of a sudden everything clears the decks and they do something. But
Grizzlies have their picks plus a Warriors pick next year.
I know, but the Grizzlies don't like to trade picks. The Grizzlies are so good at drafting.
Yeah, I mean, the teams that do have picks have shown no inclination to move them, and all the teams that would like to move them have basically moved all of them. So.
But you're right. Generally, if you're selling at the deadline, the currency is draft picks. And if the draft, it's supply and demand. If the supply of draft picks from the buyers can't meet the demand of the sellers, you're not going to see a market. What the league needs to see, what the contenders need to see, is a team or two that has pieces that all of a sudden jumps into the seller's market, so that the market gets a little bit more friendly to the buyers. It gets a little bit more supply and demand. Maybe we'll see that. Maybe we won't, though. So, all right, MacMahon's got to go to shoot around. Go check on the Mavericks over there at crypto.com or wherever they're shooting around. Thank you, Bontemps. Thank you, MacMahon. Thank you to our producers, Jackson and Bruce. Thank you for listening to Hoop Collective. We'll talk to you guys next week.
I really appreciate your friendship, gentlemen, and adios, amigos.
It's a kinder, softer MacMahon.